Hi, this is Munson with Munson Music, and we're going to talk about how you play a song called Baby Blue by Vincent. And it starts out with a really cool lick where you play open E twice, and then go second fret on the G, and then open G, and then second fret on the D, and then open A, and then second fret on the A, and then open D, and then go third fret on the low E. So you're going E, E, A, G, E, A, B, D, G, E, E, A, G, D, E, A, B, D, G. But that lick is kind of all around the E major chord. E major chord, and the way you play E major, first finger is going to go to the G string on the first fret, second finger is going to go to the A string on the second fret, and third finger goes to the D string on the second fret. And if you strum all those together, that sounds like E major chord, and it sounds really happy. And a lot of times with a song like this, to make it more interesting, I like adding something called a strum pattern. And one of my favorite strum patterns for a 4/4 like this is down, down, up, up, down, up. So we tried that a lot on the E major. You'd have down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. And so we could kind of use that E major as kind of our intro. And then we get to our verse, we start out on the E major. And then we got another E major, and another E major, and then we do another E major, and then we go to A major. And the way we play A major, first finger is going to go to the D string on the second fret, second finger is going to go to the G string on the second fret, and third finger goes to the B string on the second fret. And if you strum all those together, that sounds like A major chord, and it sounds really happy. And then from the A major, we're going to be going back to the E major chord. And then we got another E major. But then we're going to be going to a B7 chord. And the way you play B7, first finger is going to go to the D string on the first fret, second finger is going to go to the A on the second fret, third finger is going to go to the G string on the second fret, and the pinky is going to go to the high E on the second fret. And if you strum just the A string to the high E string, that'll give you your clearest sound of that. And that sounds a little nasty, and it's not supposed to. And that's a B7 or a B dominant 7 chord. And then from B7, we're going to be going to an A major again, and then we go to an E major, and then at the very end we kind of have an E major and then a B7. So the weird thing with our strum pattern is that last E and B7, we're going to end up halving those, and one way to do that is doing just a down, down up on each of those chords. So when we get to that part, we'll have E major with down, down, up, B7, down, down, up. But just to try that through our verse chorus form, like all the way through, you'd have E major with down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, up, down, up, A, down, down, up, down, up, A, down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, up, down, up, B7, down, down, up, down, up, A, down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, up, down, up, B, down, down, B7, down. One way you could kind of play through the tune, and actually just be repeating that. One thing that I would think about adding to it though is bass notes. And what I mean by that is on that first down you're doing the down, down, up, up, down, you could add a bass note for the chord. So for instance, on the E major you have low E string for your bass, and then you're down, up, down, up. So you got E with the low E bass, down, up, down, E with the low E bass, down, up, down, E with the low E bass, down, up, down, up. And then when we get to the A chord, you have your A string for your bass on the A major. A bass, down, up, down, up, A with an A bass, down, up, down, A with an A bass, down, up, down, up. And then when we get to it, the B7 chord would have an A string bass too. So you have B7 with an A bass, down, down, B7 with an A bass, down, down, B7 with an A bass, down, down. The weird part is when we hit that last E, B7, we've really only got enough time to do kind of a bass, down, on those chords. But just to try it that way all the way through the form, you have the E major with low E bass, down, up, down, E with the low E bass, down, up, down, E with the low E bass, down, up, down, E with the low E bass, down, up, down, A with an A bass, down, up, down, A with an A bass, down, down, E with the low E bass, down, down, E with the low E bass, down, down, B7 with an A bass, down, down, A with an A bass, down, down, E with the low E bass, down, down, E with the low E bass, down, B7 with an A bass, down. So that would be another way you could kind of work it through it. And because of the bluesy feel of the tune, actually, you might even want to substitute in some other chords for the E and A. So for instance, on the E major, to make it sound more bluesy, if you kind of lift off the third finger and kind of play just first finger on the G string, first fret, second finger on the A on the second fret, that sounds like E7 chord, which makes it sound a little bit more bluesy. And on the A major chord, actually, if you lift the second finger of the A major, that's something called an A dominant 7 or A7 chord. That's always a dangerous finger to lift. But those might be some chords that you want to kind of play through the song with too. So if we tried it that way, with our bass down, up, down, up, you'd have E7 low E bass, down, up, down, 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 A7 with an A bass, down, up, down, A7 with an A bass, down, up, down, E with a low E bass, down, up, down, E7 low E bass, down, up, down, E7 with an A bass, down, up, down, A with an A bass, down, up, down, E with a low E bass, down, down, use the low E bass, down, B7 with an A bass, down. So that might be something else you want to try. And for myself, because of the bluesy feel, actually there's some things called blues licks that you can kind of use instead of the chord. And one of my favorites is something called the E lick, which kind of takes the place of the E major chord. And the way you play an E lick is you take the first finger and kind of go on the A string on the second fret. And then we're going to take the pick and just strum just the E and A strings as kind of a down up. And then we're going to take the third finger and go to the A string on the fourth fret and kind of do that same thing, kind of a down up over the E and A string. So you got kind of down up with the first finger, down with the third finger, down with the first finger, down with the third finger. It's kind of a lick. So two of the licks equals one of the chords from the strum pattern we were doing. So you kind of have that E lick and another E lick. And that would kind of take the place of one of the E major chords we were just playing. And then when you get to the A major chord, instead of playing an A chord, you could play the A lick. And the way you play an A lick is first finger is going to go to the D string on the second fret. And now you'd be strumming just the A string and D string, or kind of aiming for those. So you got to down up over the A and D strings. And then third finger is going to the D string on the fourth fret. And then we're doing that same down up there. So we got down up with one, down up with three, down up with one, down up with three for your A chords. So if we tried it that way, kind of substituting in our blues licks for the E and A, you'd have the E licks and more E licks and more E licks and more E licks and then the A licks and more A licks, back to the E licks. And then when you get to your B7, you can just come out of it into the chord with the down, down, up, down. And then we got the A licks, E licks. And then you can even do one of the E licks. And then on the B7, this is kind of a me thing, but you could substitute in some triplets on that last B7 where you go down, up, but feel it in threes. So like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or down, up, down, up, down, up. So you'd have E lick. B7 down, up, which is a cool way to kind of turn yourself around to start over again. So there are also some really cool lead guitar licks through this, and actually most of them are working around something called an E minor pentatonic scale. And what a pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale, and one of my favorite ones actually is the one that is in the right key for this, where you play all the open strings. So it's basically playing E's and A's and D's and G's and B's and E's. And that's called an E minor pentatonic scale or a G major pentatonic scale, depending on what you had for lunch, who you talked to, what the first chord is, stuff like that. But basically, you can kind of play around with those notes to kind of try and get your guitar to talk, and that's kind of what Gene Vincent is doing. And there are a lot of different ways to kind of approach this, but if we looked at where there are E's and A's and D's and G's and B's and E's on the guitar, you'd have all the open strings that are part of it. And then if you go to third fret on the low E, that's a G note. Second on the A is a B note. Second on the D string, an E note. Second on the G string is an A note. Third on the B string is a D note. And third fret on the high E is a G note. And then the next piece would be all the fives, but G is 4. Because you got A, low E on the fifth is an A note. A string on the fifth is a D note. On the D string fifth is a G note. Fourth fret on the G string is a B note. Fifth fret on the B string is an E note. And then fifth fret on the high E is an A note. And then the next piece would be all the sevens, but B's 8. Because sevens on the low E is a B note. 7 or A string on the 7 is an E note. 7 on the D string is an A note. 7 on the G string is a D note, and then 8th fret on the B string is a G note, and then 7th on the high E is a B note. And then the next piece would be 10, 10, 9, 9, 10, 10, because 10 on the low E is a D note, 10 on the A is a G, 9 on the D is a B note, 9 on the G is a E note, 10 on the B string is an A note, and then 10th fret on the high E is a D note. And then when you get to 12th fret, it's almost like things are starting over again because you're back to all the 12s, because you got E and then A and then D and G and B and E, just like your open strings. And then over the 12th fret, you'd be adding 12 frets to everything we just talked about. So the next piece after that would be 15 on the low E, and then 14 on the A, 14 on the D, 14 on the G, 15 on the B, and then 15 on the high E. So all those notes are kind of fair game to play on the guitar, and you could even piece those together into little patterns. A lot of people teach them as 2-note patterns, kind of doing one piece to the next piece. But all of those are kind of fair game. And so one thing you could do is you could work slide licks on those where you kind of play the note and kind of slide to the next note of the scale. Or you could work bend licks, and this is something Gene Vincent loves, is kind of working kind of the notes and doing bends on them, kind of pressing up and into the guitar at the same time. Or you can work hammer-on licks where you kind of play the first note and kind of get your finger to kind of put down the next note of the pattern. So hammer-ons could be cool. Or pull-off licks where you kind of play the third finger, for instance, on the high E, and kind of let them fall off to the first finger on the third fret. Or even to the open string, because all your open strings are part of that scale too. So that could be kind of some cool stuff to kind of play around with. But what Gene actually kind of does with the solo is he kind of starts on 3rd fret on the G string and does a slide to 4th fret, which is kind of part of the pentatonic scale, and then goes 3rd fret on the B string, and then kind of alternates between those. And then he goes to 3rd fret on the G and kind of slides that down to 2nd fret as kind of a slide lick to a note of the pentatonic, and then open G, and then we got D string 2nd twice. So you got 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 2, 0, 2, 2. It's kind of one of the licks that he kind of leads off the solo with. And then from there, we're going 3rd fret on the high E and 5th fret on the B string. And he does that a lot. And then kind of works a slide down. And then from there, we're kind of going a 7th fret on the B string, which isn't really part of the pentatonic scale, but what Gene does is he uses that F sharp note to kind of bend into a G note, which is part of the scale. So he's doing kind of a 7th fret bend, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7 bend. And just as an aside, in the background through a lot of these licks, that opening lick where we got the 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, kind of capping it and alternating. So you may want to throw that. It's kind of, you could throw it a lead lick and then go back to that lick. It's kind of an aside. But then we go back to that 7th fret, just kind of the bend thing again. Because he loves that lick. And then we go to the B string 7 again, and he kind of turns that into that triplet thing. And then from there we go to high E on the 10, and then go B string on the 10th fret and kind of do a bend there. And then high E 10, and then B string 10 bend, and then high E 10, and then B string 10 bend, and then high 10, and then 10 on the B bend, and then high 10. So he's taking little pieces and kind of doing them a lot, right? So. And then we kind of go high on the 10, and then 10, 10, 10. That's kind of some bends at the end. And then there's kind of a lick at the end there where you go 9th on the G, and then 8th on the B, and then 10th on the B, and then we do a 10 bend on the B string, and then another B string bend, and then 10 on the B, and then 8th fret on the B, and then 9th fret on the G. So it's kind of using a little piece of those, the pentatonic step, to kind of throw in a lick there. And then at the end, we go 9th fret on the G, and then 10th fret on the B string, and then 9 on the G, and 10th fret on the B string, and then he does that 10th fret bend again, and then back to 10, and then we got 2 more 10 bends, and then 10, 8, 9, kind of taking those notes and kind of playing around with them a little bit there too. So anyway, that's some cool stuff to kind of play around with the tune too, is kind of working through pentatonic scale. And you could actually use Baby Blue as kind of like a really cool jam tune to kind of play around with all those different patterns of the pentatonic. But that's the basics of how you can strum through Baby Blue by Gene Vincent. So good luck!